Hello everybody, and a huge welcome to this, the final in our series, Thriving After Massive Global Disruption. And we're absolutely delighted today that we have Professor Raffaella Caliano from Politecnico di Milano, who's going to be talking to us about the future of work and what we can learn from the pandemic. I think we're all aware of the fact that working practices have changed dramatically in the last 5 months. We were already on a trajectory where things like artificial intelligence, automation, robotics were heading us towards what was often referred to as a fourth industrial revolution. And we know that jobs were going to be lost, but while that was happening, others would be getting created. However, the pandemic has caused this process to be massively speeded up and to have switched up a gear. And we also know that digitization has helped us significantly to slow the spread of the pandemic as we all adapted to different ways of working. Some of the previously received wisdom, so things like just in time and the gig economy, are now being called into question. But what is the future going to hold for us? So we're really looking forward to Raffaella's research that she's been doing. Raffaella specialises in supply chain, but also in new forms of working, in organisational design. So today is going to be a really appropriate way for us to end our series by looking forward, as well as kind of linking back to some of the discussions we've had in previous weeks. As ever, we will be using the Q&A function to deal with questions that are coming up. And if we can ask you to use that, the chat function we've been using more to say hello to each other, so please feel free to leave messages there. But it will be the Q&A that we will use for your questions to Raffaella. So back in early May, we kicked off our series with the University of Strathclyde with us and Professor Jeremy Law giving his experience of dealing with pandemics and learnings from previous pandemics. Since then, we've travelled the world from Hong Kong to Canada to Jordan. We visited Bangkok, Gothenburg, Pavia, New York, and as I say, we're finishing off back in Italy with Milan. If you recall, for those of you that have been on, Professor Andrew Gowdy launched our series back in May, on the 12th of May, and said a welcome on behalf of the University of Strathclyde. And so before we hand over to Raffaella, can I ask Andrew just to say a few words to close off the series on behalf of the University of Strathclyde? So I can just hand over to Andrew.
Thank you very much, Phil. Good morning and good afternoon all. As Phil says, today marks the final webinar in our series, so I wanted to say a very brief word, offer a few reflections. One of our objectives of this series has been to draw together colleagues from all over the globe, conscious of the fact that the crisis is impacting across the world in very different ways, and the response to it has varied very sharply across nations. And so the learning and insights are therefore markedly different from country to country. Certainly we have succeeded in having a very diverse set of global experts leading each week, as Phil has said, and it's been great to have many hundreds attending each week. I'm particularly delighted that so many students have participated, and I trust you have drawn real value from all the sessions. I think we have all found the commitment and the energetic contributions of our colleagues from all our partner universities to be simply outstanding, and the quality of their insights has been excellent. I trust that both those who have attended the live webinars and those who have watched later share that view. The range of themes and ideas that have been covered in the webinars has been huge, perhaps as we would expect. COVID-19 has invaded every corner of the globe and virtually every dimension of our lives, and it is therefore unsurprising that it has led to us rethinking our approach in most areas of research and education. You'll be relieved to know that I'm not going to summarize the entire series, but I wanted to offer a couple of thoughts. Overall, while COVID-19 has of course been catastrophic for many people and for many families. And we should acknowledge that. It has brought great opportunities too, and the webinars have fully demonstrated this reality. There have been many strong and interconnected themes that have emerged. As Phil said, we started off with a very welcome reminder that we have much to learn from earlier epidemics and pandemics. Subsequent webinars have been excellent in drawing out the great richness of the ideas and research in our universities and demonstrating the educational opportunities too. Naturally, as we have heard from many presenters, the crisis has encouraged significant advances in medical science and the application of these insights in response to the crisis itself. And we also heard how the crisis has promoted the development and adaptation and application of existing knowledge and expertise in other scientific and technological fields too. And of course, it has stimulated the pursuit of new knowledge there. Several speakers drew out the great opportunities that the crisis has stimulated for addressing priorities that have existed well before COVID, as for example, for those working on green energy and the green economy and the imperative of the climate emergency. Other webinars provided real insight into the impact of the crisis on our universities themselves, on our ways of working, and our ways, and indeed need, to collaborate. Several speakers looked in detail at the future of internationalization in the academic world and of new teaching technologies and methodologies, embracing online channels to an unprecedented extent, and a new world of global education to which we are now entering in what I hope will soon be the post-COVID era. Indeed, many speakers noted how this series itself has epitomized the new models of learning and teaching and sharing of the highest quality research and understanding from across the world, which has been great. It was interesting too to hear the emphasis that many speakers placed on the importance of partnerships, not simply between our universities and our research experts, but with industry and the private sector, and of course with government. Similarly, there were exceptional contributions with regard to the context in which our teaching and research is undertaken, including a much heightened awareness as a result of the crisis of global and national inequalities and the need to address these at university level. So let me conclude by thanking you all. Every presentation has provided a great example of the immense contribution that universities are making to address the many dimensions of the crisis and our wider global priorities. Indeed, the United Nations Agenda 2030 vision and the delivery of the vision's sustainable development goals has always seen universities as having a critical role to play in achieving these global outcomes. And COVID-19 has taken this to a totally new level. The role of universities has become all the more critical. And this series has demonstrated this beyond any doubt, and I am most grateful to all of those who have made it so valuable. And at Strathclyde, we look forward immensely to working with you all even more closely over the coming years as we take our partnerships to a new level. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Phil.
Many thanks, Andrew. Thank you for those final words from the University of Strathclyde. So I will now hand over to Raffaella. Raffaella Cariano is Professor in the School of Management at Politecnico di Milano. And as I mentioned, Raffaella's research interest is, and her expertise is world-renowned in the areas of manufacturing strategies, supply chain, sustainable operations, but also in new forms of work and organisation. And it's that expertise that Raffaella will be drawing on today to talk to us about the future of work and how we are learning from the pandemic. So Raffaella, can I hand over to you without further ado?
Thank you, Phil, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here with you and very honored to be the closing seminar of this terrific series. So I will try to do my best to conclude in an honorable way this series. Let me first of all make sure that I'm able to share my screen, and I hope you can see it well right now. So, as we mentioned before, let me see. Can you hear can you see the slides right now?
Yeah, no, Raphael, they're not appearing on the screen just now.
Oh, sorry. Try it again. Can you see it now? Not yet. Okay, I think now we are there. Okay. So sorry for these technical problems. Let me start by telling you a little bit what is the focus of today. As it was anticipated, the goal of today is to share some ideas about the future of work and what we learn from this period of pandemics. And of course, we are saying that many things will not be the same after COVID. I'm not so sure in general, but I'm pretty sure that the way we are working and as a consequence also the way companies are organized will hardly look like it was before, and this because as it was mentioned by Andrew also, beside creating a number of challenges and a number of negative consequences, of course there were also some opportunities coming during this period. And of course one of these opportunities was to learn very, very fast how to work in different ways and how to make this new form of work effective in a very quick way. So let me start from some consideration about how can we summarize the main changes that we experience in the way we work and the way we work during this period. And first of all, of course, what is most significant and easy to see is that many people have been asked to work from home, or at least to work remotely from their offices. And this is, of course, is not just related to the place where you work, but this has a consequence also on a number of habits that we had at work. For example, we stopped suddenly to travel all around our country or in other countries to attend business meetings, to visit customers, to visit suppliers, to visit our subsidiaries, but also to participate to fairs, to conference or whatever. So this idea of remote working is not just the fact that you move from your office to your home to work, but it's a much broader change in the way we think about our work. And of course, this has consequences, not just in terms of the spaces we work in, but also the equipment we use to work, and also the approach that we have to work, to workplace connections, to the working hours that we use. And also this requires to find a completely new balance between work and life. And I think all of you that experience something similar are aware about the challenges that are related to this. Second big change that we experience in this period is about flexibility and resilience. Of course, already starting from the first point, so working from home or in a remote way requires a lot of flexibility, and required many people to learn something they were not used at all to do. We know from some analysis that have been done that half of the people that were asked to work from home or remotely did not experience this work modality before. So you can imagine the flexibility that is required. But flexibility and resilience is also required because many companies had to rethink in a quite substantial way either the way they were doing things. You can think about, for example, all those companies that starting delivery their products at home while they were used before to deliver products through normal retail systems, or even companies that change or repurpose completely their production and their activities to new products and services. Think about all those companies that started producing goods for the emergencies, like so cosmetics companies producing sanitizing liquids and so on and so forth. So this flexibility and resilience is something that characterized quite a lot this period in terms of work. Of course, employee health has been in the center of the companies for those companies that didn't stop working during the pandemic, but also for all the companies that reopened recently. And so this is a new attention to the employee health that is central to the way we work. And this is not just because we have to sanitize the place where we work, but also because companies are really taking care of the whole health situation of their employees in order to guarantee the health of their employees. So this is again something that is very central to the recent changes. And another thing that is pretty important is that the fact that people were suddenly forced to stop many activities for some time, and also they were faced with a very challenging and difficult situation. Many people start rethinking the meaning of what they are doing, and both this concern both their life but also their work. So reconsidering what is important, what is really meaningful to them, and what is the purpose of their life and their job. So this is also something that maybe it's not directly related to the way we work, but I think it will influence quite significantly. And of course, we had also some huge problems in terms of layoff and the consequence unemployment. I will not focus too much on this today, but of course, there are consequences also in terms of work and organization inside the companies, because, for example, there was a quite interesting phenomenon that came out quite quickly, that is the so-called cross-industry talent exchange. That is companies that were in need of workforce for a peak of demand during the pandemic that started hiring, or at least using, workforce that was laid off or was temporarily unemployed because of other companies were shutting down. So these are some changes that we experienced that, as Phil anticipated, are in fact within a context where the nature of the organization of work was already under discussion, and many challenges were at the forefront of the way we work. And this is just one of the many studies that have been done in the recent years about what could be the future of work. In particular, this study has been done by PricewaterhouseCoopers and tries to summarize the possible scenarios about the future of work in 4 quadrants in this matrix. Basically, this matrix is based on 2 main possible trends of change. On the one hand, on the vertical axis, what you have is the idea that on the one hand, there might be an increasing fragmentation of work, meaning that people will work more and more in a kind of self-employed or independent way, while on the other side of this opposite views is instead the prevalence of integration and the prevalence of large corporations. So the individual will lose some relevance in front of big corporations that will set the scene. On the other hand, possible scenarios will be driven either by the increasing level of individualism, everyone think for themselves and for their own goodwill. But on the other side, there might be instead a prevalence of collectivism. So the collective good will become central to all the activities, and in particular, all the economic activities. So depending on which direction the future will take, there are 4 different scenarios that will come out. I'm not here to say which one of these scenarios will become the most relevant one, but for sure, what we can say is that during this pandemic month, there was quite a shift towards the left-hand side of this matrix because the collective good, the interest for the social impact that every single person or the companies can make became quite significant and became central to the meaningfulness that I was mentioning before was looked for by many people during this period. Let me say that, of course, the future of work will somehow it's somehow interdependent on the future of the organization. So there are also been many studies about how organizations are evolved, and this sentence is taken from a very, very recent book that has been published trying to summarize the key characteristic of the future of organization. And this book is basically telling us that the organization in the future will be infused with the spirit of entrepreneurship. So basically very much based on the individual capabilities of people that will become owner of the results of the organization. So I think this sentence summarized quite well a number of directions that the organization are taken, and we witness these changes towards the years. Some of the changes were there since 15, 20 years already, but we can see a progressive change in some key direction. And I tend to summarize this key direction in 3. First of all, organizations are becoming more and more horizontal by reducing the number of hierarchical levels, or more in general, reducing the role of the hierarchy within the organization. And the future of this direction will be what is called the self-managed organization. There are already some attempts in this direction, and some, if you want, idealistic organizational models that are trying to organize work in a self-managed way, meaning that there are teams that are quite autonomous that basically manage themselves within a general frame of the objective of the organization. A second important direction of change is towards increased network forms of organization. And this is both because organizational units inside the companies are becoming more and more independent, but also because external organizations are more and more linked and connected with our organization in creating the final outcome that we want to produce. And again, the further trend that we can witness is towards the so-called crowdsourced organization, where in fact the competence, the knowledge, and also the, if you want, the manpower sometime that is needed to accomplish the goals of the organization are looked in the crowd and not just in other organizations. And the third direction, of course, is the so-called ambidexterity that refers to the challenge for many companies to be at the same time very effective in exploiting the business they are in, but at the same time keep on their innovation and innovativeness in order to explore new opportunities and new ways of doing business. And of course, this balance is very difficult to be found, and the so-called agile organization seems to have some good ideas about how this could happen. But going back to what we witnessed during this month and what we can expect to see in the future as lessons learned from the pandemic in terms of the future of work. Here I try to summarize. Of course, it's very difficult because it's what we are witnessing is very recent, so things are changing continuously. But I think that there are at least 4 dimensions that will become key and will ask companies to reconsider the way work is organized. First of all, the first challenge is moving from what we experience, that is in fact home working, to a broader and probably more effective concept, that is the concept of smart working. What is the difference between the two? Well, first of all, home working refers to the fact that you stay at home, and this is, first of all, it's not a choice. And second, the place is just home. While instead, the concept of smart working is much broader, in the sense that, first of all, because it refers basically to flexibility in time, place, and tools that are used for work. So the difference is basically in the choice and the possibility to choose where to work and when to work at home or wherever else, and when to work at the office. So there is a better balance between the needs and the opportunities working from home and working at the office. But at the same time, the companies that already experienced smart working before the pandemic will also have to reconsider the model that they put in place as a consequence of this experience, because I think that there are a couple of challenges that emerged during this forced time of home working. First of all, the role of workplace connections. We give them for granted, the fact that we meet people in the corridors or at the coffee machine, and this is something that is very difficult to reshape in a digital world. So probably this is something where companies will need to find new ways to create this connection that generally happen in the physical place. And another thing that became quite important was how it is possible to build and nurture a corporate culture, the alignment, the sense of belonging to the organization when you work mostly from home. This was very, very clear, for example, with the onboarding of new people that started their job during this time. They were, of course, not exposed to the company culture, to the company values and purpose itself. It was much more difficult. So I think these are challenges to be faced to find an effective way to smart work. Second dimension that I think will stay as central for the future is agility and resilience. There are some studies that show that those companies that built agile organization before the pandemic were much quicker and much more effective in reacting to the challenges posed by this new situation. So companies should find the organizational way to be more agile and resilient, because this will allow them to have much higher results compared to traditional organizations. Another shift that I will see is the one from employees' health to employees' well-being. So again, a broader concept. One of the things that we need to consider is the fact that many people experience this situation in a quite traumatic way, not just because maybe the COVID directly impacted their lives or their families, but also because of these forced restrictions that we experienced during this period. So it will be more and more important to take care not only at the physical health, but also at the mental health of the employees. So this will become central again. And as a consequence of this, people should be considered by their own specific needs. So every person should have personalized attention by the leaders in order to understand what are the needs of this person in this specific moment. And if these are the challenges that the organizations are facing to reshape the world of work, there are some pillars that I see as central in the new form of work and the new organizational forms that allow this new way of working. And these are accountability, engagement, and purpose, all of them supported by leadership styles that are close to the concept of transformational leadership. So let me go through these pillars to explain what they are and why I think they are so important in fostering this new way of working. Well, first of all, accountability refers to the idea of moving the responsibility of the business results from the structure, so from the organizational units, to single or small teams of problem owners. What does it mean? It means that people or group of people, small teams of people, will be highly delegated and empowered to not only perform the activities that are needed, but also self-determine what are the goals that they have to achieve. So this is the next step, if you want, of delegation and empowerment, because it's not just telling people what they have to do and leaving them alone in finding the right way to do that, but it's also asking them to understand what is the goal that they have to pursue in order to contribute in a positive way to the overall results of the organization. And this is very powerful because gives the opportunity to move decision very close to the operational reality, so make them much more effective and push people to coordinate horizontally. So this accountability idea is very connected to the self-managed organization idea that I was mentioning before. And there is a first example that we can mention about what accountability does mean is the concept of the two pizzas team that is implemented in Amazon. Basically, the idea of Amazon is to have small teams, the teams that can be fed by two big pizzas, and that's why the name. Small teams are responsible for the services that are developed and delivered by Amazon. And the basic principle is you build it, you run it. What does it mean? It means that these teams are responsible from the concept generation till to the management of the service and the maintenance of the service over time and the continuous improvement and innovation of the service. So it's a complete accountability on the service itself. So this is the example of what accountability means. And the results that come from this are high speed of response, high ability to respond to customer needs, and also a culture of continuous innovation within the organization. But in order to make people accountable, what you need to have is further energy, attention, and passion towards the goals of the organization. You need to have people that are ready to go the last mile and do something more compared to what is required to them by their roles and their job descriptions. And this is the concept of engagement. And so engagement means that people are really willing to contribute as much as they can to the final results of the organization. The question is how to make sure that people are engaged in their work. And you see here the benefits that can come from a higher engagement. First of all, of course, engaged employees are much happier at work. They love what they do, and as a consequence of this, they tend to produce more. So even productivity will increase, and productivity not just in the face of predefined goals, but also in attaining goals and targets that are even higher compared to expected. And of course, this is also related to the idea of employees that are able to contribute also beyond the boundaries of their specific role. And this is the concept of citizenship within the organization. Of course, I was saying the key fact is to try to understand what creates engagement, and the basic idea is that to create engagement, you need to somehow make sure that employees can find in the job what they expect. We were mentioning before this fact that people are reconsidering the meaning of their job. So we need to make sure that what we deliver to them in terms of job experience is something that speaks to their priorities. So it's very important to understand what are the priorities of your employees. And here you have a very short example of a research that we are conducting nowadays at Polimi that is trying to explore the meaning of work well-being, what people expect from work. And these are some preliminary results that we had about the different meanings in different generations. And what we know by now from the millennials is that the first things that they look for when they think about well-being at job is mind and relationship. What does it mean? It means basically that they are looking for the psychological well-being, the mental health, and the equilibrium when they work, and they care about workplace relationship very much, both with colleagues and with the managers. But also another important aspect, and we know this from many research, not just from ours, is that the environment and the social impact that our organization is making is something that is really part of the concept of well-being at work, and something that employees are looking more and more. And this connects to the third pillar of my previous picture, that is the pillar of purpose. What is purpose? Basically, purpose is the reason why the business exists. Basically, the idea is that a company, in order to engage people, need to be able to talk to both employees, but of course also customers and all the partners of the company, need to be able to answer to questions such as why your organization exists, why it was created, what is the impact that the organization is making, and what is the difference that this organization is making. So as it is suggested by Simon Sinek, this is a great thinker in terms of leadership, is to moving from describing what your company does or how your company do the things to the why company do things. And this is very important because this tend to speak to the values, the personal values and aspirations of people. So if you are able to draw a purpose and communicate a purpose that is aligned with the personal values and aspiration of people, of course, this is something that is very central to create engagement in your organization. And here are just two nice stories that come from the very past about what does it mean to being able to infuse a purpose in all the employees of the organization. The first story is being President JFK visiting NASA and asking a janitor that was mopping the floor what was his role in NASA, and he answered, "I'm helping to put a man on the moon." So you can understand how the purpose of the organization was really inside every single employee in the organization itself. And similar, the story of Christopher Wren, that's architect that built St. Paul's Cathedral, and asking again workmen what they were doing, and one of them answered, "I'm helping Sir Christopher Wren to build a beautiful cathedral." So very similar example. But coming to our days, there are many examples of companies that are doing very well in creating and communicating a purpose, and in this way in generating engaged employees. And I think that Patagonia, that probably most of you know quite well, is a very good example of this. The reason for being of Patagonia is to build products that last over time and causing no unnecessary harm to the environment, because the protection of the environment and the solution of the environmental problems are at the core of their purpose and their strategy. And this connects very well with the people working in Patagonia, because people working there, they love the outdoors and they want to make a difference with the environment. So there is a clear connection between the purpose of the individuals and the purpose of the company. And this creates the most independent and innovative employees that one can think, as was mentioning in one very inspiring talk by Yvonne Chouinard, that is the founder and owner of Patagonia. What is interesting to underline is the Sustainable Development Goals that were mentioned before. And I think that the example of Patagonia show quite well what is a general trend, the fact that in many cases, building a purpose that is somehow connected to the social impact that your organization can have, it's becoming more and more successful in really engaging employees. And in fact, here you see some data or some consideration that were done by some studies that were showing that the fact that investing in sustainability is more and more connected to the willingness of attracting, motivating, and retaining employees. And this is especially true for the younger generations. And the other consideration is that sustainability is a very good opportunity to create a virtuous cycle, because sustainability requires the engagement and the citizenships of the employees in order to find always new solutions to improve the impact that the companies have on the environment and on the external society. And this engagement is also created by the purpose of the organization that is willing to achieve this kind of results. And when the results are obtained, this creates further engagement for the employees. So there is this virtuous cycle that is quite clear in many companies that invest quite a lot on sustainability. And let me close with a final consideration about the importance of leadership to support accountability, engagement, and purpose. Of course, this means that the executive in the companies cannot be just the managers, but should be leaders, first of all. What is the main difference between management and leadership? Of course, it's not easy to say in 1 minute, but to me, the difference is from the one hand, I play on structure. So I plan, I organize, I direct the activities, and I control. On the other side, I create vision, I share vision, and I engage, inspire, and motivate employees. I empower them, and I challenge them towards higher performance. And I think this is really central to obtain what we have seen before: accountability, engagement, and purpose. So let me close here with a short video that's tried to summarize this last concept. Let me see if it works.
And there's a checkbox that if you go into that you can.
Let me try again.
To happen. Many hierarchical workplace to a more democratic or equalized workplace. Well, it depends if you even want that to happen. Many organizations still, and the older the industry, the more attached they are to this, but hierarchy is a very real part of how they operate. Now, I'm not saying hierarchy isn't necessary or needed. What I am saying is research shows that to get to the 2020 workplace, we need to have less hierarchy, flatter organizations, more nimble organizations, shared. That's the model that's going to get us to the agility goals that we all have and to the innovation goals that we all have. Research has shown that the less hierarchy there is, the more collaboration there is, and there is more accountability because people work in fully functioning and self-regulating teams versus feeling like they have to look good to the hierarchy that's in place. You may have noticed that Generation Y has less of an eye or a sensitivity to hierarchy because their attitude is that we're all equal and we all work together. You'll notice that Gen Y thinks nothing of going directly to the CEO to ask a question. And if you're the leader, you might think, well, you went behind it as I'm going to go to whoever I need to go to get the information I need in order to do this piece of my job. So they don't see it as lack of respect. They see it as going to the resource that will help them move more quickly. Hierarchy means that we're actually, it doesn't mean we'll never stop having leadership, but it does mean we're going to start to see more co-leadership, shared leadership. And it does mean that, yes, we have to have reporting structure, but what I'm saying is the companies that have the least hierarchy are the most innovative, the most adaptable. What does that mean for us as leaders? It means we have to think less about hierarchy ourselves and more about how do we get the results we're looking for with the people that we have. That also means, as I've said in earlier videos, about having less ego about title and having more of a commitment to results and performance. That's the key, and that is a key component of the future, is less hierarchy, more democracy, more sharing of leadership amongst the team.
So with this, I'll conclude and thank you very much again for having me today, and I'm ready to answer any of your questions you might have.
Excellent. Raphael, thank you very much for that, for a really insightful presentation, and I think it's a great way to end the series for us to be looking forward and thinking about how do we create and how do we co-create and contribute to the future of work and to create organisations that we would all like to work in and that we would like to see the next generation working in. I've got a number of questions. We've got a little bit of time that we can kind of pick up on some of them. So can I just start with, there's a question here, Raphael, around, it speaks to the Hamel-Zanini quote about humanocracy, but I think it's got a kind of far broader application. And it's asking that, do you think that the legal system favours this kind of direction where the individual is powerless when faced with the complexity of the legal systems, both in terms of complexity, but also the expense of it? And I guess that also speaks to me a little bit about this notion that is often referred to as kind of the gig economy, where we're stripping people of any level of protection that they have for their jobs. I mean, we see kind of massive discrepancies across from country to country. So whereas France seems to be a little bit more geared towards looking after employee rights, in the UK we've kind of drifted more towards the US model of more of that kind of gig economy. But so do you think that the legislative context needs to change for us to create these organizations that are purpose driven and that people really want to engage with?
Thank you very much, Phil, for this question. I think it's really relevant. There are two aspects of this. Of course, on the one hand, there is the legal system that should be changed and innovated in order to reflect the new form of work and the new ways through which individuals are willing to contribute. Because of course, I think organizations are moving much quicker compared to the legal system and the normative system. So I think for sure there should be a change in that direction. And the other part of the answer is, well, three part of the answer. The second one is about the fact that beside the normative system, I think there is an in-between level that is the representation and participation system that is supported, of course, in a different way in different countries through, for example, the unions, but in general, the social partners of the organization. And so these forms of representation and participation are challenged by these new forms of work. So I think that unions or representation bodies should really innovate also their way of collaborating with the organization in order to foster a quality of work environment for every kind of employees, not just the traditional employees. And so, and there is a lot of research going on that direction nowadays. So I'm sure in a short time we'll be able to find out what are the best practices in terms of new representation models. And the third part of the answer is that there are, of course, counter tendencies compared to what I was saying before, because when you say purpose within the organization, what about all these people that work outside the organization and are not really included in the corporate culture? So beside the counter tendency, of course, there is also the challenge of the organizations to be able to share the purpose and the values of the companies also outside the organization when they work with their partners. So if we talk about partnership, of course, it's easier to think how you can share a purpose also with your partners and not just with your internal employees.
Brilliant, thanks for that. We've got quite a number of questions. I'm sort of trying to roll some of them into a single one. And you talked about engagement earlier, and I'm always reminded of kind of many years ago talking to an economist colleague about corporate social responsibility, and I'm making a point that where they said corporate social responsibility is a great idea, but only for people who have got the luxury of being able to step back and reflect on it. What about people who are working on the very front lines, who their entire work life is about bringing home enough money to feed their families? Do you think there's still a disconnect? So we talk about kind of smart work. Does that only apply to professional people in organizations? Or can we have that within frontline staff? And there's a kind of link in with that to another question that's been asked about, given the fact that people are working from home more, do you think that potentially this will impact the compensation that people are paid? And will they end up having to work more to earn less? Is there a way of balancing this if organizations are taking the view that, well, if you're working from home, your costs are lower? So I guess that the two of them kind of are linked together.
Okay, I'll try to answer all them together. Well, first of all, I think that corporate social responsibilities, hopefully, becoming a really pervasive way of doing things wherever inside the organization is less and less something that some people within the organization are thinking about, while the rest of the organization is just taking care of making things happen. I think the organizations that are really engaged towards corporate social responsibility and sustainable development are those that really do business in a different way in all the different processes inside the company. So this will have also to go down to the more operational roles that should be engaged in, not only in continuously improving the quality and the timeliness of the product, but also to increase the environmental sustainability or the social impact of the product. So this, of course, is more a hope that a reality everywhere, but I see that this direction taking place. And in terms of smart working, also for the more operational roles, this is something that has been forced by during the past month for those companies that had to work despite the health problems. And they discovered quite quickly a new way of doing things, leveraging, of course, on technology. I didn't mention technology that much in my presentation, but of course it's everywhere. And the companies that invested more in technology before the pandemic were also the ones that were really quite ready to move many also of the operational processes at distance. Industry 4.0 give many opportunities for operational processes to be at least managed and controlled, but sometimes also performed remotely. And so, of course, this is an opportunity. And in terms of the balance between, well, the effect on compensation and long-term view of the contracts, I don't think that, well, of course, companies can take advantage in a quite not so very good way of the situation, but I think that the smart working it creates efficiency in other ways than really requiring cutting the wages for that. Instead, what is becoming more and more important is that the quality work experience we were mentioning before should be a quality work experience, not just at the office, but also at home. So for example, there are companies that need to take care about your working station at home because they need to make sure that, for example, you are in an ergonomic position when you work. And so they should provide you all the tools and the support to build your own quality workplace at home as well. So I think that the advantages that the company can take from a cost point of view from smart working is mainly real estate advantages. So freeing a lot of space in offices that are always empty, also in normal days. So they don't really need to cut wages for that.
Excellent, brilliant, thanks. We have time for one more question, I think, and then we'll have to bring what is a fascinating discussion to a close, and one that I'm sure we would all suggest we could quite happily go on all afternoon talking about. But this final question, and there are a couple of questions I felt that we won't really get time to go to get to. So if you don't mind, maybe we can send them through to you, and you
Sure,
can just
definitely.
give us a note, and we can then post them on the website. The final question, I guess, is the one that everybody's wondering, which is that as we look forward to new forms of work and to the new working environment, what are the skills, technical skills, non-technical skills that you think are going to be in demand and will command a premium?
Sure. Well, of course, skills need to evolve with the forms of work. You cannot have the same skills with different form of work. And I would say the most important skill will be the ability to learn, because the skills that you have today will not be useful probably tomorrow. So the first very important skill is that, and it's related to the flexibility, resilience, and agility I was mentioning before. But beside that, there are a number of the so-called, I don't like the term, but the so-called soft skills that are becoming more and more important, among which, of course, critical thinking, the ability to really understand and look critically at the problems and finding solutions, creativity is becoming more and more important, but also emotional intelligence. You need to understand people and be able to work with people. And emotional intelligence extends to organizational intelligence in terms of being able really to work in a completely new organization. So I think the direction is learn how to learn and learn soft skills are the two main challenges that you will face to work in the new environments.
Brilliant, excellent. Raffaella, thank you so much for your thoughts and giving us the benefit of your research and the work that you've been doing. I know it's based on an awful lot of time spent examining how organisations are developing and how they're changing, so we're hugely appreciative of it. That brings today's session to a close and the entire series to a close. So for students who are on, we will, over the course of the next few weeks, be working through all of the attendance records, and we will be getting your certificates prepared, and they will be with you at some time towards the end of August, beginning of September. We will get certificates to you. So if you remember, 75% attendance gets you the certificate, and 100% attendance gets you with distinction. And there is still time for those of you that haven't managed to view all of them. You can go on and do it. It doesn't have to be done synchronously. You can do it asynchronously. And just before I go, a thank you to everybody that's been involved in this, in particular from Strathclyde University. There's a team of people that sit behind the screen when we're doing these, and without them this just would never have happened. And so a huge thanks first and foremost to Marie Martin, who has been key in driving this series forward, to Marina Livingston and Sarah Poulter, and to Anthony Mesagouris, who is on holiday today and has been sitting behind, has been our technical guru for everything that we've been doing. So a massive thank you to everybody that's been involved in the entire series, to Professor Andrew Gowdy for introducing and closing it, and to everybody who's joined any of the sessions, thank you very much. And we look forward to developing something that will run hopefully in the autumn term, and that will re-engage with everybody again. So thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your morning for those of you in North America, afternoon for those of us in Europe and the Middle East, and a very good evening to everybody in the Far East. Thank you.